All right, welcome back to our 15th session, our last session in this series. And this is a very special lesson for me. And tonight we are going to talk about the ultimate ball and socket, right? So we started the very beginning talking about the lollipops of the cardinal lines and how they connect to the vertical line. Well, this is the ultimate ball and socket. And so tonight we're going to explore the socket, which is the orbit of the eye, and the eyeball, the moving eyeball. And what role does that have in setting up movement patterns throughout ultimately the 5 cardinal lines? So we first want to start with tonight, most of the lesson is going to be done in a seated position rather than lying on your back. And if you have a mask, that would be great, or even a bandana would work. Now, if you don't have such a thing, I look at these as the 21st century palming of the hands, right? 50 years ago, a mask was not, I wouldn't say it's available, but was probably available for the rich or the exclusive that could have something over their eyes and is seen as being pampered. And back in that time, about 50 years ago, 1972, which doesn't seem that's possible, they used this technique called palming. And so we would begin to take the palm and we begin to, I'm going to go ahead and pin myself so you see me, because tonight you're not really going to have any visual. We won't see any replay because we won't know what's going on. But so I'll show you what we mean by palming and you can follow me.
Carol,
Mhm.
if you pin yourself, that only works for you. You want to
Oh, you
spotlight
know what?
yourself.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I'm going to spotlight myself. How about that? Better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if I begin to have my palm, I'm going to put my palm around here at the end of my cheek. So I would put it around my cheek. You can see it's touching my nose, and I would let my fingers rest across my forehead. Not so much vertical, but it's like they would cross, my fingers would cross over. So then I would put my other hand over my eye and my fingers cross at the top. And now I have total darkness under my eyes and there's no light coming in. This is what we call palming the eye. Now, I'm intentionally keeping your hands up there for a moment. Could you go ahead and palm yourself? Because I want to show you something. Now, you can start to feel that after about 60 seconds, your arms are going to feel pretty heavy. And you would start to get distracted by the weight of your arms. And so it would start to take away from where I'm going to tell you what to do with your eyes. And then all of a sudden, you want to bring your hands down, right? Can you feel it? You just want to lay down. So if you didn't have eye shades, you can palm, but you can palm and use a pillow that you could prop your elbows or your upper arms on, and that would work just fine too, okay? In case you don't have eye shades. Now, the original lesson, you could just lie on your back and also do the palming. Now, I've done this lesson several times, and especially earlier on in my life where I just lay on the back and I didn't have any eye shades, but my arms still got tired. So that's why I recommended the eye shades so that you can put your eye shades on. You're going to be able to sit back in your chair. Your hands can be in your lap, and you can attend with awareness to the directions of where I'm going to take you in the lesson. So it's going to be available for you, whatever you'd like. Okay. So let's start with this first thing. I want to start to map out the orbit of your eye. A lot of people, I want you to begin to touch. Sometimes we use the middle finger. And if you're a female, you know how we put on this under eye makeup here to get rid of these dark circles, right? So we use, I think maybe it's even the ring finger to do that. Some people do that. A lot of people think that the eye ends here where the eyelid is coming, the bottom eyelid, but really feel the orbit of how it actually sinks down in the orbit itself, right? You could start to map out this orbit. And the orbit really, the bottom of the orbit really is your teeth, the same bone that your teeth fit in. And you can go around towards the nose and up towards the bridge. The ceiling of your orbit is really your front bone, your frontal bone. Feel how that is quite a large circle, right? We forget at how big the orbit is. And it needs to be big because it houses a lot. It houses glands, it houses blood vessels, right? It houses nerves, nerves that carry your sight and nerves that move the eye muscle. It's quite large, all right? And now I want you to get a sense of size of your eyeball, okay? So if you take your hands and you make little cups like this, and you very gently close an eyelid and put your fingers surrounding the cups. You're around the orbit of the eye, but your pads actually can give a little bit of soft squeeze so that you could get the perimeter of the eyeball. Even if you had contacts on, we're staying above and around that contact. You might feel that one eye may feel like it's protruding out a little further than the other. You might feel like one eyeball rests a little higher or lower compared to the other. Mhm. So the eyeball and the eye socket, the ultimate ball and socket. So now I want you to put on your eye shade if you have your eye shade. Sit back in your chair, hands on your laps, palms up. Mhm. Feel that you're supported against the back of the chair. The feet are on the floor. Now, breathing in, right? Breathing out, just because we put the eye shades on and it gets dark, know that we are not holding our breath and that it's going to cycle through the whole lesson. And what I'd like you to do is that even though your eye shades are on, I want you to lower your eyelids. So throughout this entire lesson, the eyelids will stay closed even when we lift the eye shades up, okay? The eyelids, to the best of your capacity, stay closed. And I'll let you know when that lesson is over and that you will raise the shutters, you'll raise the shades of the lids. But for now, they're closed. So you were just touching the perimeter of your orbit. Can you get a sense of the bony orbit now that the shades are on, now that it's dark? Can you notice the height of the orbit from the top of the frontal bone to down to its base to the floor, and the width from side to side? And you can feel that maybe the walls from side to side, they're actually a little wider than it is tall. and the walls are actually much thinner. The floor and ceiling is very thick, but the walls, the sides of the orbit is very, very thin. Mhm. How far back into the socket can you start to feel? That's where the real distance is, is that the eye socket is quite deep compared to its height and width. And like I said, it has to be because, you've got your glands for your tears, you've got nerves, you've got blood vessels, you've got ligaments, right? There's a lot more space in the eyeball, the eye socket than you think. That's it. Breathing in, breathing out. Let your jaw be a little less tense, the lips soft. Let your shoulders really take the weight onto your ribs and your chair seat. Mhm. This ball and socket is so important that, there we have what's called 12 cranial nerves. These are real special nerves, and 1/3 is devoted to the eye. It's devoted to the eye in controlling the movement of the eye. So the position of your eyeball is quite conscious, and we're going to be moving the eyeball. It's under your control. But rest assured, know for a fact that your eyeball moves and does move without your conscious consent or influence. It's under a higher order. Keeping your eyelids closed, just push your mask up to your forehead and just notice that change. As I said, there's a lot of eye nerves controlling the eye, but one in particular, there's only one, the optic nerve. The optic nerve is the only nerve that senses and transmits light. Right now, you're starting to see that there's light coming through the shades, right? And this nerve is like a coaxial cable. It runs straight back from your eyeball, going all the way back into your brain. And it converts. It converts this light into images, and we know it as our sight, right? It gives us this ability to see. You see some light coming through. This is how you know that the optic nerve is transmitting impulses, right? The problems is sometimes that nerve is too active, and sometimes it will transmit impulses even when there's no recognizable images. All right. So begin to lower the eye mask again. And start to notice if you start to see as you move the shades in and you're not allowing any light in, do you continue to see some parts, eyelids are down, do you still see some kind of light? Maybe it's white dot, maybe it's black and white, all right? When we continue to see light, even though no light is coming in, this means that optic nerve, it just never gets a break. It's always transmitting some kind of signal. And over time, your nervous system develops a habit, and it becomes a chronic habit of creating muscular tension that in turn sets up chronic habits of muscular tension along the 5 cardinal lines of our human structure. And all this is done unconsciously, without your consent, without your control. Mhm. So if you hurt your head, or you hit your jaw, or you strike the back of your head, or you sneeze really, really hard, have you ever seen stars? Have you ever had a flash of light? All right. That's how you know that this nerve is conducting. Now, Feldenkrais says, even though that there's no light that comes into the eye, and you still see colors or forms or ripples of light, then obviously the nerve is not quiet. It's conducting impulses. And what happens is that your brain is recognizing that you are trying to see things that just are not there. And in Dr. Feldenkrais's words, he says, therefore, the optic nerve function becomes useless. Or in today's term, we say it's become dysfunction. So in our lesson today, we want to see what happens to the eyes, what happens to the muscular tension of the eyes, and therefore the muscular tension in your whole being when we start to eliminate any unnecessary, non-functioning transmission along this optic nerve. Okay. Now, I want you to breathe in just a little deeper, a little more fuller inhale, and then let go. And see if behind your eye mask that you could start to see if there's any areas that are black, and allow them to observe them as you breathe in just a little bit more fuller inhale. Does that change the blackness, the ratio of blackness to white? Does it make the black more fuller? And hold the inhale. Now hold it, hold it, hold it. And then exhale. And just breathe normally. See what's happening with that black spot, if anything. For some of you, it may feel like the whole area is black. But what if you begin to squeeze your eyes as tightly as possible and then let go? And when you let go, see if you see black while you're doing that, or, when you let go, is there shapes, is there colors? So you do that 2-3 times. You squeeze the eyes, and then just right after squeezing, sometimes for folks, like a bright color becomes in, and then they begin to see black again. Mhm. All right. And one last time, as you squeeze the eyes, hold it, hold it, and then now let it go. See if the black becomes a little bit larger. And keeping your eyelids, your eye shades lower, lift your mask again, bring it back to the forehead. Just observe any changes that occur when you remove the eye mask. And then lower the mask down again. And I want you to imagine out in front of you is a very large O. And the O, the outline of this O is really big and thick and black. And the center of the O is white. Okay. So just a reminder again, the mask is down and the eyelids are closed. And the O, the black ring of the O is out in front of you. And I want you to begin to use your eyeballs and begin to follow the outline of that black circle. So let it be very large. All right. It's very large. So let the eyeballs begin to move quite a bit, actually. And you're just tracking the perimeter. Circling. It's rather slow. There's no speed here involved. No prize for going fast. See if you can still keep the cyclic motion of the breath available. Mhm. Now, whichever direction you chose to go, can you reverse and track the O in the counter direction that you chose? Now, pause for a moment. Now, I want you to bring the O that's out in front of you and bring it right straight through you so that the O surrounds your head and the white center of the O is actually through your head. So now the O is around your head. Mhm. And begin to follow the circle with your eyes, tracking the perimeter of the black circle from this position here. So it was out in front of you, and now we bring it right into a little different experience as you track the top of the circle, moving your eyes up and to the right and across the vertex of your head and over, up and left, and then coming down the side. So you want to track this circle until you feel like you can actually scan in the direction that you're going relatively smoothly, right? Without the eyes like skipping or jerking. And sometimes if you just can't smooth it out, then reverse the direction from that place where it's skipping and come around to that skip from another place on the circle, right? So you begin to let the eyeballs track the black circle. Now, you're keep doing that a few more times. And I want you to slowly bring your teeth together, kind of clench your teeth just a little closer. And notice how that impacts the circling of the eyes, tracking that black O. And then, of course, let your teeth go, releasing the jaw, releasing the teeth. The clenching was only done to make sure you don't clench your teeth when you're mapping out this black circle with the eyeballs. And then reverse the direction. It's slow. It's not fast. It's smooth. Good. Now, let that go. Your eye mask is in place. Now, imagine that you were going to fall asleep, right? I want you to move your eyes as though that you were going to fall asleep. Where do your eyes go when they have that sensation that now it's time to rest? It's actually a much harder thing to do than most people realize. So I want you to now look down at your feet. Use your eyes and you look down at your feet and then you let go. Where did you start? Where did you begin? Where were your eyeballs resting when you then looked down toward your feet? Because the initial act of quieting ourselves and the turning down of the eyeballs down in the direction of the feet signals to the brain that it is time we can be quiet. But actually, when you're asleep and you don't know it, but the eyeballs, they come up and out to the sides. They're up and out. But of course, you won't know that because you're asleep. But the signaling of coming and turning the eyeballs down is very helpful. That's why most people fall asleep watching TV in a recliner, because they're looking down at that lower third. But then when they get in bed, they find themselves quite wide awake. Good. Now, I want you to begin to, with both eyeballs, look at the bridge of the bridge of the nose, that place between the eyebrows. And I want you to think of tracing that right orbit with your eyeball. So begin to trace the right eyeball. You can go from the nose, go down across the cheekbone and over to the corner of the eye, over by the right ear. And then the eyeball comes up, tracing along the eyebrow, going to the center of the eyebrow, and then coming across it all the way, ending up over at the bridge of the nose again, right? So let your awareness follow that right eye as it moves around in that direction. Now, of course, both eyes are moving at the same time, but your awareness is tracking the right eyeball, mapping out the orbit. And start to notice if you can get a sense where, as you're mapping that out, that there seems to be a few points where there's like a lot of effort. Some points move real easily, but then some parts, other points, they become, it's not so smooth. It's like it has an effort and the eyeball wants to skip a little bit across that orbit. Mhm. Sometimes it feels like there's a little, the best word I could use is a little stuck. Mhm. There you go. All right. Now let that go and come to the left eye. And with the left eye, once again, we're going to start at the bridge of the nose and we're going to map the perimeter of the eye, the orbit coming down towards the cheek, the floor of the eye, the orbit, all the way over until you come to the left ear, and then circling up across the brow and heading back toward the nose again. So this left eye mapping down and around has a tendency, this is like what we call a counterclockwise motion. And see where you have this quality of smoothness, quality of skipping, stuck. Stay with that same direction. It's not like the O, we're just staying with that counterclockwise. One more time. Now pause. A little different movement. I want to put these two together. So we're going to do this from a different perspective. We're going to start from the bridge of the nose, and we're going to have the right eye trace up and to the right, and the left eyeball is going to go up and to the left. And we're going to trace the orbits separately. Yes, I understand that both eyes do move together. But there is something incredible that you can start to track that most people would not be able to track. But you know that you can spread your awareness and sense that you're making two circles. They start in the middle, they open outward, they circle around, and then they join in the middle again. So the right eye moves clockwise, the left eye is moving counterclockwise, but you don't have to try and do it very fast. It just speed comes more available when movement is smooth and effortless, more uniform. Good. Now let that go. Push the eye mask up. Now I realize that you're sitting there and you realize your chair is not going anywhere, right? From where you're at, could you just, keeping your eyelids closed, could you just come to standing for a moment and just have a position change? Good. So you're just changing your position. You can sway from foot to foot if you want, or lift one heel. You can stretch your arms. It's okay. That's right. But see if you can keep your eye shades down, your eyelids down. Okay, good. Now, step back just a little bit and you'll feel your chair behind your legs. You know it's there. Feel it. Now, lower yourself back down to sitting. Good. Lower your eye shades down. Good. All right. Now, I want you to imagine once again that large O, the black perimeter with the white dot, right? And I want you to begin to allow this large O to start to move away from you, moving across the room. And as it moves across the room, it's going slow. As it moves across the room, it starts to shrink in size. And the further it can move across the room, it can even expand out of the room, going toward a natural horizon line. And the O gets smaller as it's moving away. It gets smaller to the point where the black O disappears. And then begin to let the O start to come back towards you. And you start to notice the perimeter of the black O, but you also start to see that it has that white inner circle, right? And then you start to bring the O a little closer and closer. And as it gets closer to you, it, of course, gradually gets bigger. And it comes to being in front of your face. And then it reverses. It moves away towards the horizon again. Shrinking in size. To the horizon. Reversing. Coming back towards you. Growing in size. And as it comes through and closer to you, just imagine that it could pass through the body this time. It's like a big hoop passing through you. And the white is passing through you and the perimeter passes through you. And it actually continues to pass through you and it's getting smaller behind you. Can you imagine that? It's getting smaller as it heads towards the horizon behind you, shrinking. The O getting little. And then it reverses and it starts to come back, and it moves through your backside, and it moves right through you. And now it's in front of you, and it moves out to the horizon in front of you, going from large to small. And see if you can continue this movement, making it so smooth, releasing any jerkiness, just so smooth, releasing any sticky points, especially as it comes and passes through you. And think that as it's passing through you, it's almost like it embraces you and it fills in any gaps, almost like it's giving you a really snuggly hug as it passes through you, heading towards the horizon. Mhm. Good. Mhm. And now the next time your O heads out to the horizon, let that O go. It's not going to come back. Good. Now I want you to think. I guess this is really maybe imagine. So when we think of something, we do something without moving. And I want you to think that you can move your head, you can turn your face to the right while you're looking with your eyes to the left, to the extreme left with your eyes. And then you bring your head and your eyes back. Now, we've done this before, and you probably have done it many times actually, but I just want you to think about that. So I want you to make it in your mind, make it more slow, the face to the right, turning the head to the right as the eyes go to extreme left. And then in one swift move, I want you to bring the eye and the head back immediately, very swiftly. So in your mind's eye, you're moving your face to the right, the eyes to the left, and quickly they come back. So it's a slow turning, separating, but a quickly bringing them back to the midline. Mhm. One more. Your breath cycling in the background. Mhm. Good. Pause. Of course. Let's see what it's like to do the same thing the other way. Think about this, imagine it, all right? So the face is going to go to the left, the bridge of the nose goes to the left, but the eyes look to their extreme right. And then in one swift movement, the eyes and the face come back to midline. Mhm. Let yourself be aware, you're the observer. How much ease is there available when they come back to the middle? See if you can move outward with that same kind of quality, even though you're going slow. Now, what if you were going to the right with your eyes and the face to the left, very quickly out and then quickly back? So that instead of going slow with the head turn and the eyes moving to their extreme opposite, it goes quick out, quick in, quick out, quick in. Uh-huh. To the left. Uh-huh. Good. Now let that go. Your eyelids are down. Bring your shade, your eye shade, and put it on, rest down on your forehead again. Just rest for a moment. And then once again, bring your eye shades, covering your eyes again. And I want you to squeeze your eyes together as tightly as possible with the greatest effort, right? And then let it go. And as you make that movement of squeezing your eyes together, feel how your eyeballs can retract inward. It's almost as though the squeeze of the eye muscles allow the eyeball to move back a little deeper in their socket. Sometimes the lip will crinkle when you do that, and then totally let it go. And when you squeeze and then let go, I want you to notice if this black spot, does the black spot have more of ability to be more available, to be able to see it quicker, larger? Is there something about the blackness, as black as wet velvet, as Feldenkrais would say, be more available? Good. All right, let it go. Now, originally we used our hands to sense the size of our eyeballs, right? To kind of get a sense of how big they were. Can you get a sense from not touching, but can you imagine how big those eyes are? How about the right eyeball? How large is it? When I was reviewing this lesson, Feldenkrais said that the human eyeball was about the size of a large plum. And I have to tell you, I have to disagree with that. I think maybe in Israel, they have different plums than what I'm used to in America. That's the only thing I could think of, because it's really actually the size of a large red grape. And I can say that with quite assurance because I've dissected quite a bit of eyes in my career. So it's about a big old red grape, not the green grape, as my granddaughter said, the red grape, because they're bigger. So you have a sense of the size of the eyeball. You have a sense of the size of the orbit, the socket that the ball fits into. And the ball is floating. It's suspended in that socket. See if you can feel the eye and sense the orbit, the ball and socket simultaneously. Remember I said the floor of the orbit is actually the same bone that houses your teeth. And since where the middle of the right eyeball is resting in its socket, in its relationship to your hard palate, you never think of the eyeball resting above the hard palate off to the right, but it does. See if you can sense the distance of the eyeball from the middle, resting in the middle, to your cheekbone. And what about the relationship of the right eye to the right ear? All right. And come to sense the size of your left eyeball, the size of the socket, and the connection of how the ball fits into the socket, where it rests. And the relationship of the middle of the eyeball, that the left eyeball that's just floating, and feeling its relationship to the left side of the hard palate, that distance. And then the distance from the eyeball to the cheek. And then the distance of the left eye to the left ear. Mhm. Can you think of this distance from the right eye to the right ear and the left eye from the left ear? Think of them both. And see if you can get a sense of what the skin and the muscles around the eye and between the eye, the muscles of the face, the muscles that connect the ears. Mhm. Do they feel soft, supple, loose? Do you have a sense of strain? Is there any connection between the eyes themselves and the ears with the skin? The connection that the eyelids have to the eyeball, to the ears. And now the eyeballs themselves, they're spherical, they're round. So as you're sensing this facial skin and your perimeter, and the spaces that occupy these dimensions, I want you to begin to up, look up in the direction and start to sense how the ears and the eyes move just gently. And then you look down gently. And you may become aware that the skin between these eyes and the ears, gosh, there's so many muscles. And sometimes we just strain them unnecessarily, right? Right. And again, a little up. See if you can allow the eyeball to look up and then gently roll and look down without activating those muscles. See if you can, it's not about stretching them, it's just more about letting them go. Mhm. And now, as you turn your eyeballs in the direction of the forehead, as though that you want to see underneath your hair, right? A lot of times we unnecessarily raise our eyebrows when we let our eyeballs look up. But have the thought that the eye, as though it's looking up, the bottom of the eye is rolling. It's almost like the eyeball is turning in its socket. So the bottom of the eyeball moves forward as the top of the eyeball moves back, and the iris of the eye looks up. Mhm. And then now down, rolling the eyeball within its socket. And I guess the appropriate word is actually really turning, if I'm really sticking to that in my own self. Is there some kind of feeling that you can let the skin be less crinkly, right? Less crinkly, less creeping, the whole scalp letting go. Mhm. And every time you look down, sense the mouth, the cheeks. Can they become less involved with this rolling? Dr. Feldenkrais would say, see if you can, see if you're screwing them up when you move your eyeballs. Can there be less of that? Mm-hmm. Good. Now let that go. Now, one last thing here. I want you to imagine that around your head, kind of like when we put that big black O, that circle, and we were having the circle around the perimeter of our head. Imagine that the circle is around your entire body. And the center, that white circle, is resting in your head, in your torso, but the perimeter of the black is around you. And imagine that on the perimeter are numbers, and these numbers relate to position of an analog clock, where 12 would be towards the ceiling and 6 is down toward the floor, and 3 and 9 are to your sides. Mhm. All right. So now from where you're at, I just want you to pick any number on that perimeter, any number that you want. And I want you just to fling your eyes over to see that number and then come back to the middle, the resting place. So it'll be a quick up and over. Mhm. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to get a sense that when you go to see that number that you chose, do both eyes get there at the same time? Or does one arrive there first? Okay. Now, how about all of us? I want you to think of seeing the number 12, which is above you, and see it with the right eye to 12, and then the left eye to 12. And then come back to the midline. Now alternate the left eye to 12 and the right eye to 12. And then come back down. And now see if you can see both of 12, both simultaneously, bringing both eyes up to 12. And then come back down. Now, it doesn't have to go fast, all right? We want it to be more smooth. Now, let's go down to 6, all right? So again, the right eye, seeing down to 6, left eye, down to 6, and then back to the midline. Then lead with the left, then the right, come back, both of them going down. Good. Now you pick a number, any number. Good. See if you can do one eye, then the other eye, both eyes. Good. Remember when I first did this, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. How can I separate my eyes? But I was surprised and delighted that I could do that. It's like, wow, oh, go figure. Good. Now let that go. Now, I want you to do 5 fast movements with the eyeballs, going from the top to the ceiling and then down to the floor. Very quick, as fast as you can without actually hurrying, right? Make it swift, light, easy. Yep. Which in the range that you can go up, down, up, down. Good. Let that go. Now, just because you're going fast and you're not hurrying doesn't mean that you hold your breath. Just a reminder, right? How about if we do 5 fast movements from right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left, fast and light. As Feldenkrais would say, fast and light like lightning. Okay, here's our last one. It's a brain teaser. 5 fast movements, but these movements are in front of you and in back of you. You're not going to turn your head. So imagine, here we go. Forward, back, as far as you can go. That's right. Fast, light, fast, light. It's a little trippy, right? Good. Let it go. Now, look at your black spot. You might find that the, the blackness has expanded, right? This is how you know that the optic nerve is really quiet, that there can be more black surface area. And you can retain this sensation of black for just a little bit longer. So today's lesson, we wanted to see what would happen to the eyes when we eliminate any unnecessary, non-functioning transmission of impulses of light along this nerve. What impact has the absence of light and the fullness of darkness, what impact has it had on you as a whole? What could happen next? What would your next best move in life be if we first sat with this darkness, come to this place of quietness, and then experienced our movement now from a new place, a place that is revitalized, right? It's smooth, it's easy, rejuvenated. Now begin to bring your eye shades up to your forehead. And very, very slowly, like just a child starting to wake up, I want you to allow your eye shades, your eyelids to begin to really wait for it. Wait for the eyelids to open slowly and gently. And looking ahead, can you start to notice anything that you didn't actually see before? Maybe it's the texture of something that seems a little more obvious than it was. And now slowly begin to rise from your chair and stand for a moment. What would your next best move in life be if we first sat with the darkness, the quietness, and now begin to walk and experience this movement from a new place? Good. Now allow yourself to come back to our community room and we gather for one last time. Wonderful. Good. We'll just take a moment. As always, it's not necessary to comment, but if you feel compelled, absolutely you can. And while you're collecting your thoughts, I want to remind you that on the replay, when I send out the email for the replay, I will be sending you something that a fellow colleague, Susan Burton, she's here tonight, she had put together the most wonderful list that outlines all the lessons, the YouTube video, its name that we used in our series and the original reference to the lesson when it came from the 1972 series. So there's two documents there. One is just like really short and sweet, and the other document contains the same information with the addition of the description of what the lesson was about. So you don't have to keep going back to what it was. So what did we do? So it was the description of it and any messages of words that I had put for quotes. They're also in there too. So they're all nicely packaged. So she did such a wonderful job, and they're PDFs and they're in the same, they're in our shared Google Drive folder. So you'll be able to access that. All right. That'll be there for you. So thank you, Miss Susan, for that hard work and putting together that template. You're going to love it. I loved it. All right. And also I want to say many, many thanks to Miss Lindsay. I just appreciate you so, letting people in, attending to that, being my backup recorder in case something happens. You know, we all need support, don't we? And so I really thank these two ladies for the support they give me. So thank you, thank you. All right. Anybody have any shares they want to end with tonight? Love to hear from you if you'd like. Miss Tony.
So I found it interesting. I have a ringing in the ears and it went away. And also a calmness, and I have an aroma in one foot, and that just settled all down. So that's amazing. It's another magic trick.
You know, it does feel like magic. And I got to tell you, you know, the more you understand anatomy and the connections, it's just like, well, of course, of course that would happen. But I do appreciate it is a surprise. It is magic. It's an exciting thrill that to have the absence of something of those two things be gone from, right?
Yeah, even though I struggled with the circles, I could feel it. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Felt like an energy that was going front and back. And but I had trouble with the circles, but you just go with it, right?
Right. And isn't it striking how it still works, even though you don't get it right? Yeah, yeah,
So I look forward to doing it again. Thank you
yeah.
for everything. Thank you
You
so much.
bet. You bet. I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but when I was done with this, I felt like I had a facelift. I mean, I don't know what a facelift would be like, but you know, I felt like not only was this so clean and clear, but metaphorically, I felt like the eye shade, my eyelids smoothed all out. And then all of a sudden I was aware of the eye shade that lifts this metaphorical third eye. And I thought, I that was wild. I never thought of something like that. But it was, I don't know if anyone else got a facelift, but I did. It's pretty cheap, actually, if you think about it. And you could go a lot. Ellen, I see your hand up now. Thank you.
Yes, I have three things to share. One is I felt more connected to my brain. I know Feldenkrais works with the brain, but I just felt like me and my brain were communicating. It was just like we were just alone in the room. Like it's almost like my body wasn't there in a way, and it was like a shortcut into the brain, and it felt like good company. It felt like I realized how cluttered my consciousness can be with all of the different sensations, and it didn't just cut out the light, it kind of cut out everything.
Yeah.
And like when I first sat, my back was a little not comfortable in the chair, and then I sort of forgot all about, like a good meditation or something, I just kind of forgot about that. So that was, it was like good company. And then one other thing, I think your voice, Carol, is like wet velvet. Your voice is, and so without seeing you and seeing anybody, it was just your voice, and it's perfect. It was perfect for this. And then one other thing, it's very, very comforting, but just it's perfect. And then one other thing is, I have a hard time finding time in the day to do Feldenkrais lessons and we all know how beneficial they are. And sometimes I'll try to do it in the morning, but there's always the full day waiting for me. And this discipline of trying, I think I only missed twice, but of me like adjusting my schedule, my clients to be here it was 4 o'clock, which was just, a bit early for me to be done with my day, but I did it. And I realized tonight, if you keep doing something like that, you can do a lesson at the end of the day and it's just a lot sweeter without keeping one eye kind of on the clock and not getting too relaxed because the day awaits. And so this experience of starting this and having it be 15 weeks, how generous is that? I mean, yes, this was a donation, which you have been most appreciative of, but 15 lessons, this was a course. This was more than just this was generous. And I feel like anyway, it gave me this experience of I didn't want to miss. And so I made it. And so I thought, you could make it at the end of the day and do a lesson at the end of every day or 2 or 3 times a week. Anyway, that lesson was as important as all of these classes. And hi, everybody. It's been great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Miss Ellen. Those are just fabulous shares, fabulous shares. And I do appreciate you acknowledging, it has been almost like a course, and I study for this and I prepare for it. And when I first started, I thought, oh my God, did I say I do 15? Will they notice? And I had to laugh. And then now we've arrived at the end. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's over after today. Or at least this is closed. And so I appreciate your acknowledgement of that. And one of the important things that I echo with you also, Ellen, is that I have a tendency to fill my day because I have people that I'm trying to get in and I make some decisions and I realize that I would tend to not do something like a lesson like this. I tend to not do it. And then I began to understand how I was giving away. I was choosing to give away that which was at an expense for myself. So I assure you, we all come to a moment in our life where, ooh, that was too much. I'm going to have to pull back. And then we can't replenish or refill, and then we just accommodate to another level. But when you take the time just to refresh yourself like you experienced tonight, even for just 2 lessons in a week, you will be amazed. You will be amazed. And then it will balloon out. It will fill your cup up in a way that makes it much more possible to do what you want to do and really congruently say yes to that which is asked for you. Because there's always going to be people wanting your attention, Ellen. Yeah. Good. All right. Miss Ingrid.
So I want to join my thanks to everybody else's. It's been really wonderful. And for me, the days leading up to the solstice are a lot of like, are we there yet? I'm so eager for the coming of the light. And this was so nice because it was sort of homage to darkness. So that's how I've done lessons with the eyes closed before, but that's how I experienced that today. And it was really meaningful to me, to allow myself to kind of dwell in the darkness. And I appreciate all that's possible in the darkness that I can't really access so well in the light. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. And then I wondered, like 3/4 of the way in, I've always been curious about EMDR. work, which is supposed to help people resolve trauma. And I wonder, is this kind of like that? I mean, it's breaking up habitual patterns, and I don't really know how EMDR works, but I'm just curious. Do you know anything about that?
I do, and actually have experienced it firsthand. And I had to laugh in that, oh my gosh, this feels like a Feldenkrais lesson, right? So
Ah,
the experience of the movements is yes. Now there is a very, you know how we focus on the O and following the O or following a number right and left, right? Well, when you're working with EMDR, you're not seeing the image of a circle. You're processing the image of a situation that has happened to you in your life that begins to play over and over, and that stimulates an emotional response. And what you begin to understand and sense and feel is that you can have the experience, or excuse me, you can tell the story of what would normally give you emotional trigger, but the emotion is gone. And so therefore, then it does not have, it's like reading words across a page. It doesn't have that emotional impact. And so then it doesn't send you spiraling. It's quite phenomenal. I mean, that's a really short version of it. And I'm not a psychotherapist, but that's kind of like my personal experience of it. Mhm.
thank you for that. And as you were talking, it occurred to me that in a way, so this helped me process like little t trauma about darkness and,
Right.
seasonal affective stuff.
Exactly. Oh, wonderful,
So,
wonderful.
so
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I came to appreciate in the darkness, like if we just think just straight up optic nerve, okay? Straight up optic nerve and its ability to translate light in images, okay? Now, in order to make a shift, all right, whether it's a psychological shift or a shift in our thinking, there has to be some kind of reorientation, right? There has to be some type of reorganization, right? But before reorientation or reorganization can happen, there has to be some rest. So the nerve that is transmitting these images and these lights and exciting the brain, right? If there has to be some rest so this reorganization and reorientation can take place in our life, in our physical body for sure, but also in our life. And that's how we become to make peace with the darkness, and we can befriend the darkness. And we know that with this comes the sweetness of rest, and then the reorganization starts to happen. Patterns now can start to emerge where they weren't able to before. I mean, they really physically emerge because the eyeballs no longer hold that chronic state of tension that influences the other 5 lines of the balls and sockets. And that's pretty profound. You could just take it straight up physically, but if you want to correlate that to your emotional body and your mental body, the thinking, right? Thinking and the absence of the images, pretty healing, pretty healing.
Like you said, ultimate, what did you say? Ultimate ball and socket.
Ultimate ball and socket. Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Miss Susan?
Thank you so much, Carol, and
And
everyone who's
ladies
been
and
with us.
gentlemen, this is Susan. This is the one who's responsible for our really great PDF. So go ahead.
Thank you, and pardon my lighting tonight. Like Tony said, now I don't usually have a lot of ringing in the ears unless I've been around a lot of loud noises. But in the last three weeks, I've had some atypical stressors and patterns. especially of cell phone use. I've wondered about that. And I've had a lot of ringing in the ears, particularly in the evening when everything is quiet. And this lesson and a lesson I did with someone in this group, actually, she may have signed off yesterday. At the end, I was like, oh, it's gone. This lesson also soothed my ringing in the ears, and my eyes feel larger. Like the muscles are smooth. So I had that facelift feeling around the eyes and forehead. I was curious about a couple of things. I noticed that my left eye, I think it moved more in an oval, where in the right, when it was leading, was more of a circle. I found it was easier to go counterclockwise than clockwise. And I could never see the white around the black circle. It was more beige. I mean, it was a light beige, but I just couldn't, I just let it be beige. My black circle had beige in the middle and on the outside of it too.
That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Oh, wonderful discoveries there.
Yeah, and it will be so nice to enjoy this evening with no ear ringing. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I see that Margaret says, I don't see the circle at all, right? Eventually the circle disappears. It just disappears. And there's a quietness within the nervous system, within the eyes, the sight, the nerves. So you're welcome, Margaret. Wendy, you're welcome too. Yeah, I'm glad you respected yourself and that you could just feel like you could take your nervous system quiet and enjoy it. So great. And Miss Heather, we'll end with you.
Yeah, I have a lovely calm clarity, and there's just the it feels refreshing. I think I do carry an awful lot of tension in my eyes, and I fell asleep a couple of times, and I never fell asleep sitting up, and I was uncomfortable with my my shoulder blades. So I ran up and I got the air cushion at one point, but I still was uncomfortable. I still could focus. I could do it. And so, I was thinking, oh, I'm only going to get a portion of this. And I think I fell asleep and I missed where the circle was going to be. So I had to make it up myself, and it worked. It really worked. And, I've been retired for 6 years, but I was a clinical social worker trained in EMDR. So you did, yeah, you described that, and people do not know why EMDR works. They just have researched it that it does work. And Francine Shapiro created this when she was walking through, just going on a walk and saw the trees in an arch, and she had some issues, and she was just going back and forth with her eyes, and then all of a sudden she didn't feel it afterwards, and then she thought she would put that, she would try that, and they did that on the vets from, and it was proof, and it's good for anxiety, it's good for trauma, it's good. And I used it with children as well as adults, and it so much, but this feels so similar with the eye movements, and it just so similar. And I think even, walking and looking, and I'm like, yeah, is it Feldenkrais? Is it EMDR? It's both, and she didn't know Feldenkrais. She wasn't aware of it. I mean, it's just a coincidence that they're so similar, but there is the digestion in the brain from the eyes. And I think that's the bottom line. And this is doing it all the time, with what we do with the focus, where we're focusing on two things at once. And that's what you do with thinking, the eyes and then thinking of the issue. And so it's very similar. And really that is 6 years ago, and I haven't continued it. So, I probably could have added a lot more a long time ago, but that's the kernel of it. But, there's I'm always aware of how stunningly calm and clear that I get after Feldenkrais, and it feels like the very best kind of EMDR or any kind of very good therapeutic session. You know, and that's with the nervous system, and that's with the neuroscience, and so it is so much more all the time than we even, I think, can appreciate. You know, there's so much more that it does for us on so many levels. And, you know, I can be exhausted and then, you know, or lose sleep. And actually these days, if I don't sleep, I'm not as exhausted because I'm doing a lot of Feldenkrais. So, and Bones for Life. And, you know, and so I guess I'm just really, really, really grateful. And, you know, yours is just so considered. What you do is so considered, and you tweak things, and it does. It feels like things just fall into place it's very magical. And this has truly been a very generous thing, as everyone says. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, my dear. You're welcome. And I think I'll close with something that you said that reminded me, you know, whether it is Francine or, you know, whether it is the Feldenkrais, or it could be meditation, it could actually be talking to a really good friend, right? The thing that is unifying across the board is this concept of awareness, right? You have become an observer. So you become out of your kind of thinking mind and images and what you're seeing. You become the observer awareness, where you have the awareness of something going on in your body, and you're tracking that. And what that does is it brings us into the present, right? It brings us into the present right here and now. And because it's only in the present, we can have something from our past, but it's only in the present where we can choose to let the organization and reorientation and reorganization and rest happen, so that something else can become more available to us as we respond in the present time from a new place. So healing. That's how healing happens to all of us in the present moment. And these experiences that we've been going through these last 15 weeks have allowed and cultivated yourself and as an observer and watching and tracking your body in different ways, so that you might become more present, that you might have experienced the potential of healing for you, becoming more fresh, and be ready to take in more light, whatever that is for you. Okay. All right. Thank you again, everybody. So appreciate you, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure. All right. Take good care. Bye-bye.